So, Kate, let's talk a bit about Switzerland compared to other countries like Germany or maybe also Italy, two countries you know very well. Um, After living in Germany as an expat, even though your family is actually from Germany, what's your impression of Switzerland and Germany in comparison?
Well, I think that people who are undecided whether they should move to Germany or Switzerland, they should keep in mind or realize, let's say, that it's two very different countries. Not only because of the language, because actually Swiss German is much harder than German.
What makes Swiss German and normal German, if you will, so different?
Look, I'm mother tongue Italian and German, and I had less problems with Portuguese than with Swiss German, and that should tell you everything. It's not the lexicon per se, it's not the words, it's just this pronunciation and this permanent that they have in saying everything that you don't, but you just hear this H everywhere and you basically don't understand unless you train your ear very well.
Mm-hmm.
So this is something one should keep in mind when moving here. That it might be a little harder than we think when it comes to language. This said, it is also true that in average Swiss people, there are much more Swiss people that speak a much better English than Germans.
Mm-hmm.
It depends. It depends, of course, but here even the farmer tends to speak English, while in Germany it is not necessarily the case.
Mm-hmm.
Then the second thing.
So basically, Switzerland is a bit more international than maybe Germany in terms of language and so on.
No, I would say Germany is very international, but people tend to stay in their own bubbles in a way. I mean, if, for example, let's say there are plenty of Italians that move to Cologne, for example, because they know that there is plenty of other Italians that are going to help them. And but then they end up just working together with Italians, hanging out just with Italians, and it's a kind of bubble that you can see here as well, of course. Actually, here maybe you might also feel a little bit more attracted to this kind of attitude.
Living in a
so to
bubble
say.
with other expats.
Yeah, living in a bubble with other expats. If you're an American, hanging out with Americans, for example, or Italians hanging out with Italians. Yeah, so that is something. This is something that both countries have. But Germany has this. You get this feeling that it's big, that Germany is big and varied. Actually, much more than Switzerland in the end.
In what sense?
That in Germany you have these different cultures, and that they kind of express themselves freely without any big restrictions when they live in their bubble, but they are part of a landscape in a certain sense. While here in Switzerland, it's not something that you have. It's not an impression that you get. At least you know that they are there, that you have communities of different kinds for Italians, Americans, Irish also probably, but yeah, this is definitely a factor.
So even
when you're here.
Germany and the German-speaking part, which is actually most of Switzerland,
Yeah.
you would say they're very different, not just in terms of language, but also in terms of culture, right?
Yeah.
Kate, you have actually lived in a couple of cities in Germany, specifically Cologne and Munich. So you've seen both like the northwest and also the southeast, two different corners of Germany. As an expat, you look German maybe because your family is German, but you weren't born in Germany and you didn't grow up there. So you were an expat in Germany.
Yeah.
And now you've also lived for 2 years as an expat in Switzerland, here in the Zurich, Zug area. Maybe you can tell us a bit about the differences between Cologne, Munich, and the Zurich, Zug area here.
Okay.
So, for example, one thing that's always interesting for many people is how do neighbors, people around you, interact with you? What is it like to live together with other Swiss people in one house here?
Well, living together in the same condominium, I must say it is in total very peaceful. Apart besides neighbors that came from another country that just shout all day long, but it's not the Swiss who do that. Don't worry about that.
Different countries, different
Yeah,
cultures, I guess.
yeah, definitely. But in general, I never had an issue at all with the neighbors. Actually, the neighbor next to us, she's one of the few Swiss that live in our condominium. Original, genuine Swiss, so to say, and she was very nice from day one. She was generous, helpful, open. But I don't know if that has to do with the fact that she has traveled the world, that she has worked in many places, so that she kind of got out of her bubble, of her comfort zone. Because here in Switzerland, Swiss people tend to live in their own bubble. That is a matter of fact. So I don't know if my experience is an experience that everyone is going to have with Swiss neighbors.
So every now and then you kept telling me an anecdote about how somebody in Germany complained that you put your bike in the wrong place. You parked your bike in the wrong place. How would you say is that? How was that in Germany, and how does it compare to Switzerland?
Well, this is something that happened in Munich, but for example, it will never happen, or probably would never happen in Cologne, for example, because in Cologne everyone is very live and let live, so nobody complains if you park your bicycle in a way that bothers others. They just don't reach out to you or tell you anything. While in Munich it might happen like what happened to me, that my neighbor wrote me a letter, a printed letter, and put it in the basket of my bicycle. Not very politely saying that she didn't like the way I parked my bicycle, and that by parking the bicycle in that way I had to move her lawn mower, and this broke it. So this is something that might happen to you in Munich. It's something that would never happen probably in Cologne, but it's something that is certainly never going to happen in Switzerland, because the Swiss person is going, if he doesn't like the way you park your bicycle in the cellar, is going to ring at your door very politely and ask you, please could you next time park your bicycle in another place or in another way. So that is a huge gap, a huge difference with Germany.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, very interesting. Especially because people might often assume that, since Munich is in the south of Germany, Munich would be similar in that sense to Switzerland here, or at least the Zurich and Zug area.
No.
But for me, it's interesting to see that basically two very distant cities, Cologne and Zurich/Zug, are more similar in that sense than Munich, for example.
Well, I would say that one thing to keep in mind if one is considering Munich, for example, is that Munich people and the city in the whole, it tends to be quite posh.
Mm-hmm.
And that also reflects on the character of the people.
Mm-hmm.
It tends to. That might be the case for some people in Zurich. Maybe some that are particularly stressed by their job, you know. But it's not something that you will feel in the air. Let's say, like in Munich, it happens, and certainly not here in Zug. People here in Zug, they are really chilled and nice. So if you're considering the German-speaking part, I would really consider Zug, even because Zurich is actually quite big in its own way. It has a lot of things to do. It's very international, but it's also very expensive. If you're looking for something more livable, something where you can finish work and go out for a walk, Zug is much better than Zurich in that sense.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So, Kate, I generally talk a lot about the upsides, the good things about living in Switzerland. Let's be sort of objective here, or at least more comprehensive, and also talk about the downsides, or maybe the just surprising sides of Switzerland. What was your number one negative surprise about living and working in Switzerland?
The number one, consider that this is a very personal consideration. Okay, this comes from my own experience and from my own culture, but maybe some people might relate to this. The one thing I didn't like right from the start, even before, and I still don't like now that I am here, it is the approach to Switzerland to the whole health system. I'm not saying it is bad, it is absolutely excellent. But I grew up in Italy, which is a country which puts a lot of worth in the fact that it must be something for everyone, that health must be something for everyone, and that it should be the state that takes care of it. So we have this kind of, if you want, a kind of socialist system where everyone pays the taxes. These taxes go into a general pot, so to say, and then it is redistributed to hospitals and so on. But this idea that I am forced, first of all, to pay a health insurance that is going to be, it depends how much you earn, of course, quite expensive. And then the only way not to pay too much is to commit yourself to paying a part of the costs that are going to come from any service that you are going to need. This is something I don't approve, even because let's say that you don't earn much, or you're going for a bad patch or whatever, and you need to go to the doctor. In the end, you will go to the doctor, but you will not be very excited about the idea of paying 1/3, for example, of this service from your own pockets, while you already pay so much for a health insurance that might never give you much back. Unless you, for example, live here for 10 years and you're going to have a baby, then all of a sudden the costs are covered. But you need to pay for 10 years before getting something in return. Mm-hmm. If you are planning to stay here 1 or 3 years or something, it might you might feel like it's wasted money.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, this was the main thing that I didn't like from the start.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, if I have to say though, so I fully acknowledge this. I see also where this is coming from. I have to say, from a techie perspective, I actually pay less money for health insurance and overall health now in Switzerland compared to Germany, even
That's
after
true.
the fact that Switzerland is a more expensive country. So it really depends on sort of your situation. And I'm not only talking about any preconditions or health situation, but with a socialist system that, for example, Italy has versus a more individualistic capitalist system that Switzerland clearly has, comes of course the benefit that if you are in good health and you know maybe how to save money and so on, then you can actually pay less in Switzerland like I do versus Germany, for example, or probably Italy. I've never lived in Italy, but I effectively, if you sort of calculate what I would have paid in surplus tax in Italy to finance the health system, I would have paid much, much more in Italy. So it's not always the same situation, but it's definitely a very different system. And I think it is one thing that is very important for expats to keep in mind. These systems work differently, and you got to do the math. You got to adapt to it. So we've talked about the differences in the health insurance system between Switzerland and Italy. What else surprised you about Switzerland?
Just to make an example, and I said this is also very subjective. It might bother somebody or not. But when I used to live in Germany, and I used to be a freelancer, as I said, I was actually glad that up to a certain amount of earned money, I had to make a tax declaration, of course, like everyone. It's death and taxes, right? But in the end, with my expenses calculated and everything, I ended up not having to pay any taxes. Because if you don't...
this was in the very beginning where you made very little money, right?
Yeah, exactly. That was still the time, when I was making very little money. Rules might change, of course, in the meantime, so we'll not say how much that is. Probably changed in the meantime, but I was glad that making my tax declaration in 1 hour, circa, or something, it turned out that I didn't have to pay any taxes. Here in Switzerland, on the contrary, you have to pay this social security taxes, however you want to call it, no matter how much you earn. It might not be much, but for me it is a matter of principle, simply. Let's say, why should I pay if I don't earn much?
So basically, one of these differences in Germany and Switzerland, and when you are a freelancer in Germany, you don't need to pay Social Security if you make very little money as a freelancer, whereas in Switzerland, it's always mandatory, basically, from the very start, even if you only make whatever 10K, which is nothing in Switzerland.
Nothing.
I mean, 10K per year
Yeah.
or something. then Social Security is always mandatory. On the other hand, you get something out of it, because in Germany the consequence of it is since it's not mandatory, you're also not getting anything out of it for that year when you didn't
That
pay
is
into
true, yeah.
the Rentenkasse. In Switzerland, the system is just a bit different. You always have to pay into AHV, no matter if you're employed, freelancer. It absolutely makes no difference.
Yeah, but it's still it's still the same rule. It happens the same as with what you pay for the health insurance. It's money that you might never see again.
This is the thing about Social Security and all sorts of socialist systems. You might never see that money again.
Yeah.
I mean, you gotta be consistent on that, right?
Yeah.
Either you pay into that system and then you hope to get something out of it if you're in need, but if you're not in need, you're not getting anything out of it. Or you live in a perfectly capitalist system where you don't pay into any Social Security or anything, but also nobody's going to help you, right? So
you're on your own, yeah.
That's how insurances work.
Yeah.
It often is not to your advantage.
Yeah. Living and working.
Yes.
Okay. In terms of living, I cannot complain. I mean, I had this great luck that you already had found an apartment for us and that you helped me with getting my residency here and getting my papers and everything. So he might really help you with that. 38 countries might really help you. So give it a thought if you want to have bureaucracy made lighter for you. If I had come here alone, for any reason, but if I had come here alone, I would have probably taken a room in an apartment with other people, which is something that when you turn 30 you don't want to do anymore, actually.
Right.
But since you don't know where to look or who to ask and everything, that might become a real issue. And so you might get something which is overpriced, or something too far, or something too ugly, which is also possible. So that is something that will take a lot of time for you if you don't have somebody who already kind of arranged it for you, or if you haven't made enough research, which is going to be much more than you think. Just like the search for a job, basically it's the same amount of the same effort that you have to put in it.
Yeah, very good points. I can definitely confirm that also with the apartment thing. It can be challenging. I think I was actually lucky because I searched in the middle of the pandemic, which in my view made things easier, not more difficult, because many people didn't want to move. I was one of the few people who were interested in doing that. But yeah, it's especially if you don't know the tricks, if you don't know the system and so on, then it can be very hard. It definitely pays off to get somebody who knows the system to do that.
Yeah. I have a friend, for example. She comes from Germany, and she was offered a job, so that was already a step less that she had to take. Let's say something less that she had to arrange herself. But she came with her boyfriend, and they had to look for an apartment. And first they found something kind of in the countryside. And then when I met her the first time, she told me that she was kind of in panic because she had to leave that house in 3 or 4 months or something. And she didn't know what to do. Then in the end, we met again many months later, and she told me, yeah, in the end we just decided to get something in Bühler, which is outskirts of Zurich. We pay a lot of money, but we have a terrace, and we don't want to think about it anymore. Never again. Yeah. And she takes like 90 minutes to get to work every day.
Yeah, I can imagine that if you actually have to go to an office every day, that can be disadvantages.
Yeah.
Yeah, don't do that.
No.
work remotely, work in a hybrid way or something, and
Yeah, try to get a hybrid.
don't spend that much time commuting. It's not worth it typically, or there is another way. Typically, it's not necessary to commute that much every single day, especially not as a software developer. Also, not in Switzerland, not even with many of those hybrid rules. Don't do that. So the sun has gone down, which means we need to stop recording for today. This was our 2-year review with Kate, who is not a techie. I wanted to bring you this perspective. What happens when you bring your non-techie partner with you to Switzerland, because you might have to convince your current partner about any reservations they might have about Switzerland. I can definitely say it is possible for everyone almost to have a life in Switzerland with their techie partner, even if they're not a techie, even if they don't resonate with Switzerland so well as you might. But it's important to keep certain limitations and challenges in mind, to talk about them, and to find out together whether Switzerland is the right country for you guys. Spoiler alert, it's not always a yes. Sometimes Switzerland isn't your number one country. There is a lot of other nice countries out in the world, but sometimes Switzerland is actually one of your top 3 countries, and maybe even your dream country, and you should definitely give it a try and find out together whether Switzerland is the country of your dreams. If you like this video, click like and subscribe to hear more about moving to Switzerland, and see you in the next video.